Well, let's get into it. Honestly, when we heard about this opportunity, we said, this is the time to do this. Wow, there's a lot of things going on. And to those of you that are in sustainability, I'm just gonna say congratulations, because all eyes are on us, and this is our opportunity to shine. And we're gonna talk turkey, and we're gonna be real. And I really appreciated, Brian, you were real today, and you said things that maybe a year ago or 2 years ago people would be afraid to say, but you just came in and you said it. So thank you. And we call this sustainable material management through closed loop and circular economy programs. I'll touch on Padnos briefly. Since 1905, so it's been a while, and I'm fourth generation. We do paper, plastics, metal, electronics. We have locations throughout the state, about 25, and also northern Indiana. We recycle about 3 billion pounds a year of material. And I'll talk a little bit about our capabilities, and then we'll dive into what's next. So you heard the mission: continue to find ways to innovate, lead, and make a positive impact in this world. And I just spoke with our team members at a town hall the other day, and I said, I want to differentiate between making a positive impact in this world and just changing the world. Change the world is great, maybe not really attainable. Making a positive impact in this world, if I do a good job talking to one team member today and making them feeling better about their lives, I made a positive impact in this world. If together we find one type of material that didn't have a solution yesterday, and tomorrow we find a way to recycle it, we're making a positive impact in this world. So to me, those words are about the attainability. And we just relaunched our values. This is kind of like the lens by which we try to make decisions. And we have the same values that we had for probably 100 years, but we just looked for some new refresh ways and words to use. And the ones, they're right here. It's see the possible, which is very important for the topic today. Always be crushing it, have a can-do attitude. Simple, just be good people. Be a force client, can't live without. And the one I like the most is you don't need a desk to be a leader. I got to give a shout out to G3, the third generation. They're in there, Jeff, Shelley, Mitch, and Doug. And that's Seymour over there. He's 99 years old. Still likes to get his updates, and says that what do you think kept me going? It's the company. So he's really, really proud of what we're doing, and he's so passionate, and really always wants to know what's going on, how we're dealing with the changes in this world, and hope to have him keep going for a while. And we are based in West Michigan and Holland, but obviously our customers are throughout the country and nationwide and international as well. I just thought I'd show you a quick snapshot of that. And let's talk about what we do. So what do? We make things more valuable by leveraging our diverse processing equipment with lots of capacity. There are recycling companies out there that are way larger than Padnos is. I don't know of many that have their hands as many processing equipment as we do. If it's tough and complicated, we're passionate about it and we want to do it. So I'll just give you some snapshots of some of those capabilities. So we shred and we shear and we sort manually and we sort electromechanically and electromagnetically, and we're sorting material using X-rays, and we form briquettes. It's the only machine that does that in the country. We have, I don't know, maybe 17 different ways of baling material: paper, plastics, metals. We chop wire. We repurpose electronics. You asked about electronics. We fabricate custom equipment, which is extremely important because that's the way that we can collect material in a better way. And each one of you out there that's manufacturing something, you know that you have your unique ways of doing that. And we have our unique ways of coming in with our engineers and helping you collect that in a way that's more sustainable, that's going to add more value. We shred plastics. We grind plastics. We do density separation through float sink. You heard about the importance of density a little earlier. So we manufacture plastics resin, we extrude it, we blend it, we have extensive lab capabilities and injection molding presses to actually understand that quality. That's the plastics resin that we were talking about. It goes into bulk silos and in tankers going from our plant in Indiana directly into your manufacturing plant. So there's a lot that goes into it. Material management, when we talk about closed loop programs, how do we actually follow the material throughout the process? And now I'm pausing for a second. And basically the purpose was to say, okay, we have a lot of things that we do in-house, so now what? Now I want to talk a little bit about all the things that are already happening, both in closed loop and in circular economy. And you'll see that at the end, what I'm saying is we're only scratching the surface. But just to kind of make sure that we all understand. So this is an example of a TPO material approved by a tier 1 automotive supplier. It's a central council. We collect their parts. We basically grind them. We run them through the lab. We extrude them, make it into a pellet. It goes back into the same type of part. ASA is an example where we take the side mirrors from our vendor. We, again, grind it, extrude it. It actually goes to a network of contract molders that end up molding parts back to the same type of vehicle. Talc-filled polypropylene, this is more of a circular economy story. It could go from hoses and drain tiles back into automotive parts. HDPE, we touched on it a little bit. We probably have one of the largest programs in the country to repurpose and close loop on packaging equipment that goes right back into the manufacturing, and that's also a circular economy story because some of it is with other material that they introduce back into the packaging. HMW, again, so packaging that will end up going into truck liners. TPV, that's a cool story. We know that we have a lot of RV industry in northern Indiana, and the roof membranes go through this machine over there that you see. It's called an ARIMA, densifies it, pelletizes it, and it ends up going back right into automotive with these, what do we call those, Gary? There we go, floor mats, thank you. Painted TPO, so bumpers at the end of their life, end up going into roof shingles. Buckets, we talked about that. Multicolor, the favorite color should be black. And by the way, we say that black is easy. Black is not easy. Once you start talking about black, you learn that there's like 1,700 different types of blacks out there. It's not that straightforward. So it's really depending on the application and what you're going for. Let's talk about the furniture industry. So a lot of nylon, glass-filled nylon that's coming from furniture ends up going into wheel carts. Styrene coming from plant tags and plant trays going into food display. And if you need it to be a little more abrasive, you can make it out of ABS. The same manufacturer makes it out of styrene and out of ABS, different parts going into it. Glass-filled polypropylene with inserts. We have technology that automatically takes the inserts out, and you make stakes there for signs. So, we talked about our capabilities, then we touched on all the things that already exist. Now I'm going to talk about scratching the surface. I've been saying that I'm so excited about plastics recycling because it's kind of where we were at with metals back in the 60s. So Lady Bird Johnson went to President Johnson and said, hey, people are leaving cars on the side of the roads. We got to do this project, we're going to call it Beautify America. And President Johnson went to Ford and said, hey, you should figure out a way to use this recycled metal in your cars. And he went to his foundry engineers and they told him, we can't do it. And he said, you see the name over here? That's my name, so figure it out. And they did. And to think about today, that for metal to not be recycled, 100% of it is recycled today. And where we're at with plastics, it's kind of where we were at in the 60s. We are scratching the surface, which means great opportunity. And these are some examples. So this over here is Seymour, and this is 1990. And back then he was working on a project for design for recycling. My point here is for 30 years plus, we've been talking about it. I found that my grandfather died 7 years ago, and his personal assistant, Ruth, she's amazing. She came in and she said, I think you should read this. In 1992, speaking to the Society of Plastics Engineers, he was saying, if we choose to develop a positive automobile program with 100% result, my recommendations are the following. Do not use a material that does not have a recycled market, minimize the number of plastics material used, and code them in a very simple manner. Substitute metals whenever practical. 1992. And then this happened. And thank goodness that it did, because this is the catalyst that we needed. And this is happening. And in 2013, they did this project, and they called it green fence. And now we will all remember the difference between green fence and national sword that we'll talk about in a year. I was in the plastics business back then, and they said that they're going to do this for 1 year. They're going to shut the gates for 1 year. And I remember thinking, gosh, I hope this is a forever thing. Because as long as it's not a forever thing, people could come to you and say, yeah, of course, yeah, we'll just take it all. You heard some of the stories. And we have an excuse. But it wasn't a forever thing. It was really a 1 year, and we went straight back to it, all of us. And then this happened. And this is a forever thing. As China continues to grow, it's embarrassing to them. They want to be a part of the real world. That's it. It's never happening again. The United States manufactures about 80 to 90 million tons of steel a year. China, 800 million. Just so we can understand the scope of what we're talking about. There is no world where China all of a sudden decides that they're doing something and we're not going to feel it. And again, it's a great thing for us. Greta's out there. Everybody's afraid of her a little bit, and they should be. They should be. They should be. That's okay too. My 8-year-old daughter, Ella, my middle child, she says that when she grows up, she wants to be a marine biologist, and she wants to go into a submarine and collect all the plastics from the ocean. It makes me want to cry a little bit, right? How amazing is that? The careness level of the next generation is real, and the world is waking up. We are all waking up, and we need to do this in partnership. So we all want to do the right thing, right? Everybody does. So I'm just going to give some examples, and we're just going to think a little bit about carbon emission. And what happens when I ship loose material in a box compared to when maybe I can process it in-house. And it's going to take a little bit more time, and it's going to add a little bit more cost. But 40 to 1 when it comes to PET banding. 46 to 1 when we're talking about expanded polystyrene. 6 to 1 when we're talking about volume reduction for parts that we could potentially grind in-house. 8 to 1 when we bale corrugated. 22 to 1 when it comes to film. Here's a picture to just illustrate that. So if every box of film has about 35 pounds in it, I'll get 2 bales out of it. Or if I could bale it in-house, 22 to 1. I've had some side conversations before we went here when we actually, what do we do? The narrative right now is out of control. The narrative is out of control. People just want to make sure that they're on the right side of the narrative. I just want it all recycled, 100%. I'm saying today, I'm calling out all CEOs. If there's a CEO out there that says, I want to be zero landfill today, I'd love to get a meeting with them. Maybe there's a chance, depending on what you do, but what are the consequences and what do you know or do you not know that's actually happening downstream with your material? To say I want to strive to a world of zero landfill, let's go. And now let's talk about commitments. Companies like Cascade Engineering over here. Commitment all the way from the top. And there's a lot of commitment in a lot of your companies out there. I know it for sure. But that narrative could easily get out of control, and we're here to help. We need to get together and talk about the things that maybe in the past were not so popular to talk about. This is just a small, cool example of things that we know some people could do. Use perforators to provide, a second life to your own material. Instead of buying packaging material, boom, just create your own. This is a small example. Janelle, I got to give you a shout out. So this is fabric that's coming from the furniture industry. I think specifically this is Steelcase. Shout out to Steelcase. And, these are seat belts from cars. Happens to be from our yards. Is this saving the world? Probably not, but is that creating awareness and makes us all think about what we do? Herman Miller's in the crowd. They've been committed since forever. Hayworth, all the big companies are trying to figure out how to do the right thing. So what is the right thing? This is a grade slide. It's gray, and I tend to say that my favorite color is gray. Leadership is gray. Scrap for sure is gray. Put a pile of scrap and get 5 veterans that have been with a company for like 30 years. They'll have about 4.5 opinions about what that is. And this is when we talk about the loss of control of the narrative. This is where we have to be cautious and say, wait a minute, it's okay to challenge the facts. Some of it is not necessarily gray. Here's a black and white one. We talk about mixed material, and then I got to give credit to my Uncle Jeff, who coined the phrase hopelessly mixed material. So if I'm going to make an alternative resin for you, and it's going to be made from material in this left box over here, who wants to buy that? It has a bunch of sprues and runners in different colors and probably different material. We have no clue what we're even looking for. It's not enough to actually run it through an operation and sort it. And there's so many different grades when it comes to plastics, because the minute that we start talking about additives, we start talking about percentages of additives. It's a continuous function. In a way, it's kind of infinite. So when this happens, we're not helping each other out. I got to give a shout out to our team members that have been working on shipping and receiving specifically at our docks. This is at our plant in Wyoming Plastics over there, and probably one of the most challenging jobs over the past few years. Green fence, all of a sudden national sword, companies all of a sudden kind of waking up and saying, wait a minute, this is a problem, people are changing, the things that we're doing on our plant's floors are changing. Very complicated. This is what they look like though when they get segregated material. They're all happy and excited about it. And so what are we doing about it? What are we doing about it? We're taking 20,000 square foot out of our facility, and we're creating a showroom. We're going to call it Sustainability City. It's going to be launching on April 15th. And as part of the conversation, so we're hosting the Supply Chain Management Council on April 15th. If you're not a part of that council, that's okay. Talk to us and we'd be happy for you to come and see. We're going to have all the different types of equipment that we believe some of you might want to have on your floor. And the idea is for you guys to come together with other people into this showroom so that we can have a conversation. Sustainability people, we can't be in this journey by ourselves. We have to manage our dependencies, and we know that those dependencies are in different areas of our company. Some other things that I'm not going to go into, but oceans plastics and ocean-bound plastics is a huge thing. We're developing some programs very early on, compost, KNF, and wood recycling that could potentially go in. I'll have some pet supply that could actually go into pet bedding. All sorts of just like really, it's all happening right now. You know why? Because there's more commitment today than there was a year ago. And that is exciting. This is why we should all be super excited about. And this is my call out. This is my call out to everybody in your company, to CEOs, where this has been working for us way better than others, even in the examples that I gave earlier, when I showed where we're closing the loop, where circular economy is happening. When we have cross-functional teams working with other cross-functional teams, that's when it's working. When there's commitment all the way from the top. When the purchasing people can work together with the shipping receiving people, with the marketing people. We have competing KPIs and people need to get permission. So that's when we see success happening. And you know, together, and this looks like a cliche, but this is the truth. Together we need to knock down those barriers. And right now we have a greater opportunity to knock barriers than ever before. What I like about this picture is like, okay, we knocked down the barrier, it's towards a green future, but there is risk. And that's the storm that's in there. There's absolutely risk. I promise you, there's less risk in just running virgin material. But what people are understanding, there's more risk today by not being committed to thinking different and to doing things differently. And as long as you treat some of these projects as R&D, that's okay. By default, R&D, you know, some of it succeeds and some of it fails, but you know, hashtag sees a possible. How can we help? Please contact us. We have a dedicated sustainability team. I really want to thank everybody. We just got this notice on Wednesday that we have to do this, so good job. Reminded me of the investment banking days of working long nights, but it's great. No, thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you for your commitment. The fact that there's so many people here today really excites me, and it gives us an opportunity to launch on a new journey. The world is changing, and we want to be a part of that change together with you. We don't have all the answers. We don't, but we just want to be real. Thank you so much for your time. Yes, sir.
You mentioned expanded polystyrene. It seems to be a lot of it still being used, but nothing you can do with it other than throw it in the trash. What do you do with it? How do you collect it? What can we do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to let Carrie touch on it for a second, but it does remind me that in my home we put everything in a yellow bag, and it's easier for me to talk about it right now because that company changed hands, so it's not the same company anymore. But we were putting it in there, right, as part of our curbside, and then they just stopped taking it. And in order for us to understand, they would just leave it in the middle of the driveway, and that's how they would give us that message. When densified, that material has a great market. I mean, it could literally reused, and that's what we're talking about. We believe that densifying it at the source is going to be a better solution and give it more hope. I still know about a lot. I've just visited a customer the other day on Friday, and they're putting all of their styrene, expanded polystyrene, back in the truck, and it just goes back out of state. And it makes you scratch your head for a second and kind of think about carbon emissions, and is that the right thing to do or not? Maybe yes, maybe, because if that truck is going to go back empty and it's just riding along, so maybe that's a good solution, but they have a very unique and specific program going. But it's definitely a problem. Carrie, do you have anything to add about that?
Well, there is a lot of new materials coming online. So I think what we're going to see is more and more packaging materials being made out of something that's compostable or highly recyclable. So I've had several customers that have switched over to more of a paper type of packaging that can either be molded or it looks like kind of a waffle inside so that it supports it. I do think that EPS, otherwise known as styrofoam, but that's a branded trademark, that EPS does get a little bit of a bad rap. There are certain functions for it that are valuable, right? If you want to put a hot beverage or a milkshake in something, that beverage is going to stay hot longer or stay cold longer if it's in that kind of product. The challenge really is, how does it get densified? And obviously everyone in our home isn't going to have a densifier. They start around $25,000. But for businesses that generate a large volume, the key is to get it densified at the source. Don't put it on a recycle truck and wait for it to travel lots of miles, right? So it depends. It's that gray.
And thank you for just saying that, because one of the things that we want to be extremely cautious of, because there's so much grayness out there, and what is exactly the truth, and what is good for the earth, and what's not. I want to give the opportunity to every type of manufacturer to support their cause. And it's not our job, at least as Padnos, to basically determine, hey, this is good, this is not good. Some of these are obviously way greater issues that maybe policymakers will have to make a decision on over time. The point about the cost, though, of the machine, that's the opportunity that I think people are going to look at the same amount of dollars differently today than what they might have looked at them a year ago. So $25,000 is a lot of money. And maybe for certain companies today, they will look at that as kind of saying, yeah, we're absolutely going to do that. And that's going to go into a separate line item of budget. And I think that that's a good opportunity in general to help people make better decisions over time. Yes, sir.
Is densifying melting it, or what happens?
You want to touch on that for a minute?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different types of EPS densifiers, not to be confused with other types of densifiers. So the densification process specifically for EPS is different. It does heat it up. There are some that do more of a compression style. There are some that literally melt it into what we call purge in the plastics industry. So it will fall like a drip almost into a form, and they'll make a brick out of it. But some of it comes out as brick. It just depends on the equipment that you have. But heat and compression.
Yes, ma'am.
I know you talked a lot about volumes being a pretty key component. What happens with if there's smaller manufacturers with lower volumes? Is there opportunities to consolidate manufacturers and materials to try and get it?
You know, that's an excellent question, and we're working right now. We're actually, I don't know if it's okay to just, I'm just going to touch on goodwill for a second. We're working on figuring out solutions for smaller manufacturers because they absolutely have an opportunity. We're thinking about what we call quote-unquote milk runs, right? If we could just go and stop and pick a couple of boxes and go to a centralized location and potentially give opportunities for certain team members that wouldn't have an opportunity to find a different job. And so we have a program that we're working on developing right now with Goodwill specifically for that. But that is also another place where I could see a coalition or an organization, kind of like right here, to basically say, hey, how do we get together and figure something like that out? And maybe it all picks it up to one location, and leveraging some of the equipment that we're going to show in that showroom, basically be able to provide solution. And then every one smaller manufacturer will only have to fund that, at a very small percentage, and together it kind of works.
There are some people really working on that already. So coming up, do you remember the date? Coming up, we're going to be down in Kalamazoo. Brewery Vivant, we helped them get a grant for a baler down there. So the brewery, or not Brewery Vivant, but Bell's. I'm sorry, I said the wrong brewery. Bell's. They're both really good. But we helped them get a baler. So they're collecting super sacks, like all of the breweries in the Kalamazoo area, and collecting them. But there's a cost to that, and that's again those competing objectives. Trying to get people together to do something when there's a cost. It's not free to have any kind of truck sit at your dock and unload it, process the stuff, and put it back on. And it's really difficult to figure out how to cost share that. So those are we've done some of that work with Nichols before out in Muskegon and tried to utilize some of their backhauls. It's challenging. I mean, but it's
One thing that I will just say, we are passionate about this. So please, if you give us a call, we'd come in and at least see what we can do. And figure it out. And I do think that it's going to change, meaning the value of material may start going back up. You were talking about creating a market, and that's exactly what's needed. There needs to be some sort of financial incentive to help people make those right decisions, and specifically post-consumers curbside, when we are seeing these programs dropping nationwide right now. That narrative has to change really quick. And the minute that market gets created, that will give it incentive to launch again. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of that happening. Yes, sir.
The plastics companies, chemical companies are continually motivated to reduce their costs through efficiencies, and you're always going to have this cost competitive situation where post-consumer and virgin material are going to compete. Can you talk a little bit more about how the recycling market, is going to compete with that pressure to lower the cost of processing recycled material?
Yeah, I don't know that I can answer that. I think that there's going to be a lot of legislatures that are going to be tackling that, and
Are you guys considering that chemical infrastructure or chemical recycling infrastructure, and you know anything about that?
not yet. But I don't know what I don't know. So I think that opportunities are going to come at us in a quite rapid manner, and I also think that all the big companies, the conglomerates that we're talking about, they're investing heavily in trying to figure this out as well, right?
Are the virgin companies getting into the post-consumer recycling market?
What I know is that a lot of the virgin companies are trying to figure out how to introduce recycled material into their streams and how to figure that out. I used to be very concerned letting people into our plastics plant, kind of like, ooh, I think we have something special going on here, and I wanted to keep our secret sauce just for ourselves. And today, after figuring out how difficult I'm like, please come on in, like come check this out. It is so hard, and we make chicken salad out of chicken, beep, right? That's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to do something that is extremely difficult by definition, and Brian, you touched on it. So it's very unique, and honestly, when we hire people that have experience with virgin resin, we're seeing that for them to make the change just in their mind that this one thing can become this other thing is difficult. So I think that's the opportunity for the bigger companies right now. Go ahead, in the back, and then you, ma'am.
You're already doing a lot of sustainability, obviously, but have you guys looked into your environmental
Yeah,
try to find ways to reduce it in this next decade?
absolutely. Thank you for asking that question. My team here is smiling because that is exactly what we're doing right now, looking specifically within Padnos and what Padnos is doing. For a long time, we've been evaluating the trucks that we're buying, the high-lows that we're buying. We switched to compressed natural gas a few years ago. There's all sorts of programs that are happening throughout the company. I can't stand here right now and tell you I know exactly what's our carbon footprint, but that is an initiative that we started because we don't want to wait for anybody to ask us. And you just did, by the way, which is awesome, and thank you. That's exactly the accountability that's happening. But at least the team probably feels great right now, knowing that when they get those emails, and literally as we're working on this presentation, it's easy to say, okay, yeah, what we do is great for the world by design, but what else? What else is that we can do? And I think that, going back to just be good people, there's a lot of things and small decisions that we make day to day that are the right decisions for the world. But in today's world, it is important to share that. It is important to show everybody what you're doing. It is important to be able to create that level of accountability. And as a privately held company, I think it's an even greater opportunity because I feel that when there's the streets type of pressure to say, I need you to have a sustainability report, and then you just have to, sometimes that narrative could easily get out of control. And that is the conversation that I'm hoping to actually help public companies as well control that narrative. Thank you, ma'am.
If there were to be a federal price on carbon, don't you think that would make the virgin industry more expensive and then the recycling industry more profitable?
I would say that I'm gonna just be cautious about these type of questions and just general say that I'm sure that we've seen in the past when there's external intervention, there's impact to behaviors. And I'm going to be very cautious of just stating an opinion on that. I think that our job is, here's the cool thing. I think that the industry was waiting for a while for legislation to set the narrative and make things change. And I think that it's actually happening without it because Greta's doing it. And when the largest money manager in the world comes out with his annual letter, this BlackRock, and basically says in his annual letter that this is what they're going to be looking at and deciding. It's basically a call out to CEOs, and everybody's listening, and they're saying sustainability is going to be a key measure of how we're going to make our investment decisions. People start changing really quick. So it'd be great to see change happening even without legislation, but I don't know how it's all going to play out. It's going to be very interesting to look at things over the next 12 to 24 months, I would say. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.